Welcome into the Gaming Discourse. I'm Tyler Frater alongside Richard D. the Cruz.
Hello.
And Chief Engineer Lieutenant Commander Connor Frater.
Hello.
It is Monday, April 24th, 2023. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at the Gaming Discourse, or don't follow us on Twitter. I don't know what's going on. Every time I see there's like headlines about Twitter exploding and stuff. So just go to our YouTube channel, YouTube/Gaming Discourse. YouTube's never done anything bad, so that's the best place to go. Patreon.
What you do is on Twitter, you block everyone with a blue check mark, and you just comment how they paid $8 for a blue check mark. That way, you get hit by the new terms of service for making fun of people with a blue check mark and get yourself banned off of Twitter.
Patreon.com/TheGamingDiscourse, $2, $4, $7, $10. You can get early access to our videos, access to our Discord server, and more stuff like that. Richard, tell us about your Gaming Discourse FM, since I always forget about it.
Oh, man. You can also follow Gaming Discourse FM on YouTube. It's a weekly pseudo radio show where I highlight some of our favorite video game music and some of the best video game music. It's not just our favorites. It's just games that should be highlighted.
There you go. We've got news. We've got games. Connor, would you like to tell us what you have been playing lately?
It's not Marvel Snap, I can tell you that.
Hey.
I have been playing it, but I'm not talking about it. Labyrinthine is a survival horror maze game.
Okay.
It's there is a story they can go through, but there are procedurally generated mazes that you can go through that spawn monsters in them and different objectives that you have to do to get out of the maze. There are safe houses in them, so that you could regroup, collect yourself. It is up to 4-player co-op, so collect in a safe house, plan out with your friends while the monsters are out doing their thing. It is in early access, and some of that is a little apparent. I had a monster phase through one of the walls, but it was like not a huge section of wall, it was just around a corner. It just like clipped through the corner a little bit.
Sure.
So
Using hacks.
Yeah, exactly. Little things here and there that are, indicative of early access games that aren't perfect, but early access.
Sure. Okay. You told me that it was mediocre.
Yes. It's solving a maze, but there isn't either. I haven't explored like all the features of the game yet. But there's really nothing to assist you in like mapping out the maze. Like you can't like drop anything to like I've gone down this path already, or it's a hedge maze, so you can't really mark on the walls. So yeah.
So it's all just memory based then, huh? Okay.
And there's so many twists and turns that and because it's procedurally generated, that it's really hard to memorize.
Okay, because I assume it all looks the same. It's
a hedge maze.
Yeah. So, like, is there no like above the hedge maze? Is there any like
night sky,
like level design or
night sky?
Just night sky. Wow.
Yeah.
All right.
It seems very minimalistic.
Yes,
it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot there.
So you're just playing a horror version of the Windows screensaver.
Yes, and interactive.
Okay, all right,
interactive.
Okay. Richard?
I've been playing, I picked up and I've been playing Octopath Traveler 2.
Hey, okay.
I picked the PS5 version because, well, first off, the Switch version was sold out because there's a hell of a sale going on right now. Well, not anymore, but it was at GameStop. There was a hell of a sale going on. But I picked up the PS5 version because ultimately I was like, well, I'm pretty much going to play this on my TV, and I really want to see those beautiful pixels, 4K, whatever. And I'm having a blast with this game. It's a really, really great and traditional JRPG that has some flair to it regarding your moveset. You have this ability called, well, first off, it's normal JRPG. There's fight, magic, etc., etc. But you have the ability to kind of build up a meter every turn for about 5 turns. And when you're ready to use it, you can hit the shoulder buttons and you will essentially stack attacks onto each other. So if I wanted to attack 5 times in one turn, I can, and I have enough of that stacks, I can go ahead and do that. My character will attack 5 times in quick succession. or if they perform a magic ability, that magic ability will be enhanced. And it provides a kind of, if you're using a magic ability, it provides a very small kind of an action sequence that it shows off. But it is very, very, very gorgeous when you pull that off. The effects are incredible, especially since it's kind of this pop-up book feeling world, but it has realistic fire, realistic ice, lightning. So that kind of blend of the two on top of each other provides some very, very, very beautiful visuals. Your characters also have latent abilities, so each of them can do something different. I chose my first character. His name is Temenos. He's a cleric. He has a latent ability that every attack that you perform when you activate it will take off of the enemy's shield. And when you reduce their shield to 0, they will essentially break and they will become dazed or stunned. And so your attacks will do more damage to them. There's a secondary character. Her name is Throne, and she is a thief, and she can be allowed to attack twice in one turn if you like charge up her latent abilities. And those will happen if your characters get damaged enough. They have another meter that kind of pops up, and you will unlock those abilities almost immediately when you get them. But I chose the main character. There's 8 people based off the name Octopath, yep. 8 paths. There are 8 characters that you can choose. Well, like I said before, I chose Temenos, and he's a cleric with the church. And he kind of he's also an inquisitor. Like during the day, he's, a godly man. And at night, he's also godly, but he uses violence in the name of God.
Okay.
And that causes this real fun dynamic with him and his character he interacts with, because he will do things that aren't quite, by the rules. And his partner will be like, wait, what are you doing? This isn't godlike. And he'll be like, well, hey, I've been given the gift of flame is what they call it. So why would they give it to me if they didn't want me to use it this way?
Interesting.
So but he's very fun about it, as much as it frustrates the other character he travels with. So I immediately started with him, and I enjoyed his story because of his personality. You will go through their first chapter, in which at the end of the first chapter, you will understand what their goals are, or what each of these characters' goals are. The bad thing about having the 8 characters and their 8 stories is that you have to bounce between them. I found Throne, the thief character, right after when I went into the next town. And it was kind of awkward because I helped a little dog, and it turns out it was her dog that she had. And she kind of was just like, hey, I'm looking for 2 people. Can I join your part? And I have a feeling you're going to encounter them if I join you. Can I join you? And of course, I'm like, yeah, I want another party member. So joins you. But that's it. That's the face value of them joining your team. There is no, in Temenos's storyline, if you go to his next chapter, the characters that have joined you have nothing to do with that story. Kind of your party will be broken up for specific sections of the story.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
When you fight bosses, when you fight enemies, they'll come back, but the story itself, they have nothing to do with, and they won't be around.
Okay.
Which also provides other awkward, I call them awkward moments, but there's they have something called a party talk. And if a certain situation happens, you can press start, and 2 of the characters will talk to each other. Temenos comes across a dead body who was killed by another assassin. And after the cutscene ends, you can talk to the thief. She'll be like, oh, yeah, this job was sloppy. He left blood all over the place. This just, if it was me, you wouldn't have known it was me. But that's it. With what that character knows, Throne, she could help immensely with Temenos' storyline. But because everything is kind of surface level, it's a bit of a downside to having these characters. I'm very grateful that they're on my team, and it's very cool that I'm traveling with all of them. But besides having them on my team in those parts or running around on the map, they literally have nothing to do so far with each other based on everyone else's stories. So as of now, I have 5 characters. Throne is a thief who is next in line to the Assassin's Guild, but her 2, they call them mother and father, they basically betray her, so now she's after them. Oswald is a man who is framed for his wife and daughter's murder, so he's trying to find those responsible. Ochette is a really cute, like, beast girl, and she's trying to find mythical beasts to save her, like, village. So she has to find them. And then I just encountered an apothecary who's lost her memory. So she's trying to find what's going on with that, but she's helping people along the way. So I have those 5 right now. I've been playing for about 10 hours, but I'm really enjoying it. And even though their stories don't intertwine at the moment, singularly, they're all very, very interesting so far, at least the ones that I've encountered. So kind of pulling me through that, and I enjoy it a lot. But that's pretty much what I've been up to.
Awesome. So I'm still playing Everspace 2. I've got 2 videos I'm working on at the moment. I'm playing on Everspace 2. I have a separate script that I'm working on, so the Everspace 2 review is going to take a little bit longer. But I mean, at this point, Everspace 2, I think, is one of the best games this year. It's one of my favorite space games of all time. It may be one of my favorite games of all time. It just continues to be really fun and really, just really satisfying. There's one thing I'm not so sure of in Everspace, and I kind of talked about this last time I talked about Everspace 2. So in the first Everspace, combat was really there's lots of different enemies that fought you in different ways. So you had your standard pirates, and the combat was you're twirling, you're spinning, just awesome, intense dogfights. There were aliens called Ancients, and it was like an orb that would float through space, and they would fire really fast-moving projectiles that were really difficult to dodge. So you had to dodge them. The way I always did it was best to fly backwards in circles, and that was the easiest way to dodge. And then when you killed them, they turned into a black hole. So if you were close to them, you were dead. You had to fly away as soon as they started to explode. And then there were like cruiser ships, like corvettes that were bigger, and they had lots of shields or lots of shielding. So in order to take them out, you had to hit them with weapons that took out shields, because if you hit them with weapons that took out armor, it wouldn't do much damage. So there was a lot of different variability there and stuff like that. So thus far in Everspace 2, the combat only really gets ramped up with those like optional optional challenge areas where you're fighting purposefully tough enemies. And other than that, the combat stays pretty much the same, which is a little bit of a letdown, but it's still the combat's still really, really good. I think there's one thing I'm going to miss. So in the first Everspace, a giant capital ship. So in the thing that would push you in the first Everspace was that you were being chased. You were a fugitive. So you had to, as you zoomed into a new star system, you had to collect your resources, collect enough fuel to keep going, and then you had to jump into the next one. So think of like in Hades, if you had a time limit for each zone.
Yeah.
Not like 2 minutes, but like a solid time limit where you had time to run around, grab stuff, and then get out of there before Hades would pop in and start attacking you. That's kind of what happens in Everspace. You have so much time to get all your stuff, to collect, loot, and then you had to jump into the next zone. If you waited long enough, a capital ship would fly in, which would take up... It would be like as big as the entire map, massive, with just tons of cannons on it. You couldn't fight it. You could sort of fly around and survive it, but you couldn't destroy it. The only thing you could do was run away. And that capital ship was awesome. But I don't think the capital ship is in Everspace 2, which is a letdown, because it would be interesting to see sort of that scale in an open world game where you're not constantly in a rush or something like that. So I haven't seen that, but I have fought a few new enemies with a few new weapons that require a little bit different. It's just I don't think the variability is there that was in the first Everspace. But other than that, upgrading the ship is great. The story's pretty good. The story's pretty solid. Adam is the main character, Adam Roslin, who is a clone, and this is one of the Adams that escaped, and he's now living his life. and the hive is your AI. And so I think it's kind of a trope in a lot of games where the AI is like a kind of like Claptrap or something, where it's like funny or witty. Yeah. I think in a lot of games, yeah, and a lot of the games, and a lot of it's kind of become like a trope that the AI is like a quippy, happy, you know, I don't know, like saying obvious things like I would recommend you don't get shot next time, stuff like that. You know, I think is in a lot of games. Well, Hive is like the opposite of that. Hive is sarcastic and like an angry British man. He's like, not to bring up Spock again, but he's very much closer to Spock. And Rosalind is much more the happy-go-lucky, optimist, kind of Nathan Drake-like character. So they form a good yin and yang that is a fun little character dynamic. And conversations between them are fun and kind of keep the game going. But I don't. I do wish there was a little bit more characterization. There's a lot of characters in the game, and you can tell that I think they had trouble figuring out how to like give each character dialogue and stuff. Because there's new characters and they are reintroducing characters from the first game. So it's like they want to bring all these characters back. They want to have all these new characters, and they're trying to juggle them all. And it just results in some characters. It's weird. You'll play like 2 hours and you don't hear a peep out of them. And then suddenly there's a conversation and they're gone for another hour. So I think kind of has a bit of trouble there. But yeah, the visuals are fun. The side quests are interesting. Or the visuals are really good.
Even on the little screen I have here, it's very, very,
yeah.
very
and
gorgeous.
the soundtrack's ridiculous. The soundtrack is just, it's phenomenal. It is ridiculously good. I had you guys listen to some of it.
2 words.
It was cool.
2 words. Phenomenal. Yeah. So, and that's going to be one of my favorite soundtracks this year. The other game that I want to talk about, and I completed most of it, I think, is The Forgotten City. So have you guys played The Forgotten City?
No, but I've heard a lot about it.
So The Forgotten City was a mod for Skyrim back in the day. And then it got made into its own game. And I never played the mod. I know the mod was super popular, but I don't want to spoil too much because The Forgotten City is one of those games that really is best if you go into it knowing absolutely nothing. You just don't know what to expect. So what I will say is it's sort of an investigation game. You go in, the game has a historical setting, and it has to do with, we'll say, magic, kind of. And it's a game about a city that is stuck in some kind of magical trap. And you have to solve that trap. And so you go around the city, and there's only like 22 characters or something. Like there's very few people. It's a very small city. And you go around and you talk to these people and you figure out how to, through talking to all these people and getting all this information about the city and figuring out how to unlock different places of the city and like how to send this character to get this key to unlock this door, all these little tiny steps to eventually solve the mystery of this city. There are 4 different endings, and I got one ending, and then I went and did another ending. I went back and did the 4th ending, and it's a really interesting, really good game. And like I said, I know I'm being vague, but I don't want to spoil a lot of it. It's a really good game if you're somebody who, I don't know, if you have a spouse or a friend or whatever that doesn't like to play games but loves to watch.
Yeah.
It's really good because it's dialogue heavy, and it's philosophy heavy. So a big theme of the game is the difference between right and wrong. And this is one of those things where I kind of get frustrated with games sometimes because, and I was like this with, and I know there's limitations. I was like this with Disco Elysium a little bit, but Disco Elysium sort of gave a wider berth of answers, or wider dispersion of answers. But I do get a little bit bothered in games when they ask you some massively loaded philosophical question and you have like 2 dialogue options, and it's like, okay, well, I wouldn't say either of these options. So it's like, I don't want to answer either. And then you pick one and the person you're talking to is like, you're a moron. It's like, well, I didn't want to choose either of these options. But I understand that obviously a game, developer can't sit there and have 1,000 different options to reply. That's not
that attitude.
Not realistic. But in The Forgotten City, there's lots of conversations about the difference between good and bad and stuff like that. And I feel like it does a decent job sort of parsing all that. But I do wish maybe there were a few times where there was a couple more dialogue options with a little more nuance. But it is really thought provoking, really interesting. Atheism is a topic that games don't really tackle, and I think it's because games are made by people that are relatively not that old, right? Like the first generation of game developers, like Warren Spector's generation, are in their 60s right now. So we're talking past 20 years. The people, like a lot of people that have been making games, are in their 40s, 50s right now. So like, as opposed to like movies and things like that, these people are not super old. So it's a younger generation, and the younger generation is going to be less religious and whatnot. At least if Pew Research is correct.
Religion was also used to attack video games as well. So
Yeah,
I
that's true.
think that's
Yeah.
a little bit of it. Anyways, go ahead.
Not that it's. I'm sure there are plenty of game developers out there that are religious.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But the point I was trying to get to was atheism is not a theme in a lot of video games. I think it's not a common theme. Talos Principle is a famous one, and The Forgotten City again is a game that kind of puts belief in a god, atheism, specifically Pascal's wager, right into the discussion about like whether or not you think a god exists and stuff like that. And so that's always fun to think about. I would highly recommend it. That and not coughing, two things I would highly recommend. If you're looking for like a narrative, very slow paced, a game where you can really take your time, think about what you want to do. And it's also one of those games where, like Disco Elysium, you can get stuck and it's just like, what do I do here? And then you find that first domino, and for the next hour, it's just domino. And that's so satisfying when you find those paths and you hit the wall again. And you're like, damn. And you explore, talk, and then you find that next domino, and it's like, hell yeah. And then you unlock those different paths. And that's a really good feeling that the Forgotten City nails, that I really does remind me of Disco Elysium. Okay, let's hit that ad. Thanks for listening. If you like our content, please consider subscribing or leaving a like and comment. You can find us at patreon.com/thegamingdiscourse. And our tiers are $2, $4, $7, and $10 and include getting your name in the video credits, early access, and access to our Discord server. Okay, so we're going to start off by talking about this game, Unrecord, if you haven't heard of it. It's a game that the perspective of the camera is that of a body cam, like a police officer, chest mounted, I guess, body camera. The game looks crazy realistic. It's like I said, it's all from the perspective of a body cam. I think even the game has like a vignette, like you're looking through like a circle,
like a fisheye kind of.
Yeah, it's published and developed by Drama, which is a French studio. The Steam description says the game tells the story of a tactical police officer who must work to solve a complex case. To stave off claims that the footage was fake, the developer posted a video of the game in real time, including like no clipping, like floating for a second and then spawning the character in and all that stuff. And yeah, when you watch the animations and stuff, it does the hands move independently of the camera a little bit. So it does not feel like a normal FPS where you move the camera and the gun are sort of like held together.
Yeah, they're one.
There's a lot of like sway there and stuff like that. And there's no in the gameplay footage, when the gun is fired, the gun recoils really realistically, and it's not the same recoil animation. It's like a chaotic recoil animation like you would expect. So it's brought up a lot of discussion about the medium in which you're looking in this game, because police body cams are obviously something that is highly political and whatnot. In a Steam update, the developer addressed the political nature of the game under the heading pro-police or anti-police. And they said, quote, "The game does not engage in any foreign policy and is not inspired by any real-life events. The game will obviously avoid any undesirable topics such as discrimination, racism, violence against women and minorities. The game will have no biased or Manichaean take on criminal acts and police violence. We also respect and understand people who may feel disturbed by the game's images. Art cannot fight against interpretation. The public generally trusts film, series, and novel writers on the intelligence of the point of view when it comes to detective, gangster, or police stories. Why not for a video game? If the game presents political messages, they will be made consciously or in your interpretation. If the game aims to be submersive in certain countries, we will assume the label, end quote. And again, the studio is French, so I don't think their first language is English, which is why some of the sentences sound a little off.
Yeah.
But so I don't think that was, I think there's a little bit being maybe not lost in translation, but just not getting translated full correctly there. So what do we think? Did you guys see the...
Yeah, I saw a small video of it. Yeah. So I didn't see the full trailer because I did not watch the full thing because I was so I'll use the word unamused by it.
Okay.
I did not have any sort of like feeling whatsoever to watch it, or sorry, when watching it, I had no feeling whatsoever. I wasn't like, wow, this looks cool or anything. I don't know why. Because of how good it looked, it just looked like somebody running around. like and then shooting, you know, at things. So I didn't really. I guess it was. I believe it's a video game, 100%.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But because of how much it just looked like a filming, it was, to me, it was just like, well, this is boring.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have any like strong opinions on it because there's nothing there for me yet. I don't like. We've tried the real life camera
like
footage stuff several times, you know, and it works well depending on how you do it. Outlast is a positive viewpoint of found footage stuff, but like there's Kane and Lynch 2 Dog Days, which or Resident Evil Dark Side Chronicles, when you're playing the game and everything is kind of like this. It's not something that I want to stay in for a certain amount of time, especially with a lot of people who have motion sickness issues. But of course, not everybody is going to play this game. So
yeah, definitely.
It may not be as big as an issue as I am perceiving it to be.
I totally understand a lot of people's hesitation with it.
Of course.
Because it does look, and I think when I first watched it, it's really scary. And I thought this would be perfect for a horror game.
Yeah.
Because found footage, I think, lends itself to horror. And that's why a lot of found footage movies are horror. The only found footage movie that's not a horror movie I can think of is Chronicle, which was that like superhero movie.
Yes.
That was back in the day. Or like 2015 or whatever it was. But anyway, so it's like, but picking up a VHS tape, plugging it into a TV, and you have this like blurry image of some terrifying monster or supernatural event or something like that. That is terrifying because you're not only watching it, but you're in the perspective of somebody that is discovering that this thing exists, right? And that in and of itself is terrifying. There was a Netflix show, like, what was it, Archive 15 or something, Archive 19, I don't know, came out last year, where the entire show was about a guy who was investigating a murder through old VHS tapes.
Oh, cool.
And like as he watched the VHS tapes, the ghost that haunted the tape started to haunt him, and he started to see things in real life that he was seeing in the tapes. And so I found footage sort of lends itself to that. When you take that and you put it into like something like law enforcement, that you drop that supernatural horror element, I think it gets awkward because it is scary and you're not treating it. And again, we'll have to play the game to see more, but that was just my initial reaction to the trailer, was like, this seems like it should be a horror movie or a horror game, but it seems like it's just a story about a police taking out bad guys, which is just awkward because it just doesn't seem. It's not exciting. It's scary to me. You know what I mean? So if they go for something that's like exciting, then I feel like that would be a weird mood to try and accomplish. Yeah. Because it's just maybe this kind of goes into what you were saying, because inherently it's just not exciting. It's really intense. It's really scary. So
right. And it was like when you were explaining the story earlier, as I was thinking and remembering the footage that I looked at, there's also not a lot that I feel like you can do with body cam stuff, story-wise. Unless you're on a police officer, maybe you're doing parkour stuff, or maybe you want to make like an actual video game adaptation of like Hardcore Henry or something.
Yeah, which is just an FPS at that point.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah, but in the same vein, yeah. But I kind of had this really quick flash of like, man, that would be cool if you did do a police body cam footage type game, but have it be along the lines of LA Noire and have it like an actual investigation.
Yeah.
If you're looking at a crime scene, you're trying to figure out stuff like that would be very interesting as well. But then you'd have you don't have to, but then the way the arms move, the way everything is, it's like, well, why isn't this a VR game then? You know?
Sure. So I think what you're getting into, and once you introduce, yes, go ahead. Yes, it's like, why not? What is this like? Okay, let's ask the question: what does the aesthetic of the body cam give the game? That's something like just another realistic FPS. Squad, for example, right? Squad is this hyper realistic game, right? In Squad, when you get shot at in the game, when you get shot at, the screen gets fuzzy. In Squad, when you get shot at, the game gets dark and fuzzy. So similar suppression mechanics and stuff like that. So what does it lend this game that Squad doesn't have? And it's that element of like visceral realism, right? Okay, so then it's like the next question is what about that visceral realism is important to you? Why do you want to put that in your game? Is it just that level of visceral realism? Okay. Now, again, getting back to the politics of it is like when you watch, if you're watching body cam footage, it's not because, I feel like most of the time it's not because things went great and everything's perfect and you're just interested in seeing some like horrific event go down. It's because something horrible happened and now that's evidence or something like that. So that's a really tricky thing to navigate if you're doing a game that's like just a straight law enforcement story, right? As something like LA Noire might be. I did find a few things in the statement interesting, that art cannot fight against interpretation. I don't totally agree with that. And I have an example here. It's not my example, but I think on some levels that's true, that art can't fight interpretation, right? But at the same time, I think there are ways that you can mitigate certain interpretations. And one example, and there's a YouTuber by the name of Three Arrows who made this argument a long time ago, completely unrelated to the situation now, but I always thought it was interesting. So you guys know the band Rammstein, right?
Yes.
So Rammstein made a song called Deutschland, which is about obviously Germany, and the entire song is about the lead singer's, I guess the perspective of the song is about the love for his country while somehow acknowledging, right, like Nazi Germany and all kinds of other horrible stuff that happened in Germany. And I think there's really similar feelings in the United States and probably tons of countries, right? It's like, how do you balance those things? How do you reconcile your love for a culture or for a country with the horrific things that happened not that long ago in the past? But anyway, in the music video, there is a woman who the music video goes through all these German events through history. So like the Weimar years to the Nazi Germany to the split between East and West, and the band gets dressed up in different uniforms or different outfits to like show the different time periods. But there's a woman that appears in each time period signifying that's not in the band, and she's sort of personifying the idea of Germany, right? But the woman is black, right? So Three Arrows had this interpretation that I really liked. He said, one, why can't the woman be black, right? There are plenty of black Germans. But two, he said he thought one of the reasons they did this was because the footage, if you cut it, could be co-opted by like alt-right or whatever, because you make it look as though it's glorifying certain things.
Right.
So what you do is to hammer in the fact that you're condemning these things, you put a person of a certain skin color or of a certain ethnicity in there that Nazis do not like. Therefore, they can't co-opt it because it would be going against their very beliefs. Right. So that is an example of an artist telling a story, doing something, and sort of making sure you can't interpret it. Now, obviously, that's just a mitigation. It is still possible, right?
They will stretch it, yeah.
You could take screenshots where she's not there, and you could glorify that, right? So I just thought that was really interesting, because I think you can fight against interpretation in certain ways, but it's not necessarily impossible. And then I do like the idea of the public trust in film and books and stuff, but video games, there's like this other level of distrust, I guess you may want to call it. And I think maybe it's just because games have an association with fun.
Yes,
right?
yeah, with younger audience still, they're still seen as
So when you have such a heavy association with fun or with like a relaxation leisure activity, I think that's a harder sell for heavier topics, even though I think we've gotten past this idea that games have to be like this, that every game has to be something that you can do for leisure, right? And and films are the same way, right? It's like Saving Private Ryan's a really good movie. Saving Private Ryan's also entertaining, but it's not entertaining in the same way that a Star Trek movie is entertaining or that Star Wars is entertaining, right? And entertainment, again, does not necessarily mean leisure and fun. Entertainment it's much more vague than that. So in the same way is like, but I think they are correct in saying that society at this, I think, has this sort of generalized view of games as like Fortnite or Mario, but the deeper stories and stuff, the more serious things are sort of disassociated from games because people's conception of a game is something that is fun and silly and leisurely, not necessarily something like I don't know, Senua's Sacrifice, which is like really slow, really dark, constant commentary on mental health and stuff like that. So I think that's interesting. Some people read it as a cop-out because it's like, well, films can do it, why can't we? And it's like, okay, well, calm down. Which I don't think that's totally untrue. But yeah, sorry, I just thought there was a lot of interesting stuff there.
No, yeah, there's a lot to interpret with everything that's been said and everything that's been shown. So it is, one of those situations where it is an initial reveal to something that doesn't even sound like it has a ton of form yet, so we can't exactly.
That's the other thing. Yeah,
we can't exactly comment on it. So,
okay, Richard, tell us what's going on with Sony.
Sony has acquired Firewalk Studios after complaining about Xbox acquiring a lot of stuff. Anyway, it's just a gab. Firewalk was started in 2018 by former devs of Bungie, and Sony first announced in 2021 that it would be publishing Firewalk's first game. They are now officially a part of Sony. Firewalk lead Tony Hsu said, and this is taken from GameIndustry.biz, quote, "We've assembled an amazing team at Firewalk Studios, built specifically to bring memorable multiplayer experiences to players around the world. Sony Interactive Entertainment has supported our team's visions from the beginning. With the incredible creative power of the PlayStation Studios ecosystem, this exciting next step will help us transform that vision into a reality," end quote. Game Informer's Christopher Dring.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Exactly how it's spelled. Yeah.
Says it says that this is one of the 10 live service projects that PlayStation has had in development. When did they announce? They announced that a couple years ago. The 10.
Yeah, they've announced. So that's interesting because I was surprised when I read 10 because we have Haven, which I think is what's her name? Super famous developer.
Jade Raymond.
Yeah, Jade Raymond. She started Haven, I believe.
Yes, I believe.
And then you have one other. Anyway, I at the top of my head, I would have known.
Last of Us is probably going to be one.
Oh, do you think so?
The multiplayer one.
Yeah, you're probably right. But anyway, I would not have gone up to 10. I would not think so. I don't know where that count comes from, but Games Industry is a reliable source, so I'm going to say
they said that. Sony came out and said that themselves.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
Okay. Then I missed that quote. So I think this is interesting because, and I guess live service is an ambiguous descriptor.
It is
in some sense.
It can be. Depending on how it's used.
Like every live service game isn't going to be Destiny, right? There's like a bunch of different live service, Counter-Strike, and
different ways.
Yeah, different ways from Fortnite to
whatever. Apex is live service, yeah.
So, but at the same time, I always thought of like the general idea or the rule of thumb for companies was you didn't want to have too many of these things because the idea is that you capture an audience and then that audience is playing that game 24/7 all the time for years. There's only so many people on planet Earth, so every one of these games needs to have a gigantic audience. So if you have a bunch of live service titles, they're just going to cannibalize one another, right? Because then what happens is game A has this huge swath of players, which is great, but game B and C aren't getting that same return on investment because Game A is so popular. And that doesn't happen with your first party IPs, right? Because they release at certain times of the year, once every 6 months or whatever, and they have their time to sell. They have their long monetization tail of people buying the game, and then you have your DLCs to give you a little bit of a boost.
Of course.
And then the next one comes out. So that's a different business model that cannibalization doesn't adhere to. So I don't know. I thought that was interesting. And of course they have Bungie now. So it's like, well, there's a huge one, right? So what else do you necessarily need? But Sony must see something here. We know that Sony wants to get into mobile more.
They do.
Which is a terrifying prospect. And and that's a good example you brought up, because I always forget that. What else isn't Bend Studio also working with Naughty Dog on that multiplayer?
I don't know if they're working with them, but Ben Studio is working on something.
Okay.
I don't recall what it is though.
Okay.
Or I mean, I don't even think they've said anything about it.
Okay. Yeah, I had completely forgotten that Naughty Dog's working on a Last of Us multiplayer thing. But yeah, I just think that's weird.
It is. Yeah, we'll see what happens, because I guess, like, I don't know. You don't want to split your user base because you won't get the returns that you're looking at.
I think that's yes. I think that's,
and then you're gonna think it's a disappointment, and then you're gonna cancel all of these things, and then you're gonna dissolve these studios because you think it's their fault and not yours.
Yeah,
terrible.
And I don't think that speculation is too wild, because these live service games are big investments, and if they don't work, then they just have to be put to rest, right? Look at Avengers or whatever,
right?
So it's like. It's big. It's big. Well, I don't know how big of a risk, but it's a big enough risk that even if you are moderately successful, you may have to stop, right? So is it worth having 10 of those? But again, live service is sort of an ambiguous definition. You know, a Last of Us multiplayer game tacked on to Last of Us 2. Well, that's a pejorative term. Added to Last of Us 2 or whatever, that may not have the same sort of live service connotation that a Destiny 2 would have.
Right.
So there's going to be differentiation there. But yeah, anyway. Okay, moving on. Axios has news of another labor dispute against Activision Blizzard, and Sega has decided to unionize. There's not much to say about this one, as there doesn't appear to be a lot of public info. So I'm just going to read what Stephen Totillo of Axios wrote today. This is the entire section on another labor dispute at Activision Blizzard. Quote, Activision Blizzard is the subject of a new complaint filed to the National Labor Relations Board, according to documents received by Axios. The largely redacted filing shows that on April 17th, a claim was filed in California that the company violated workers' rights and allegedly conducted employee monitoring beyond the extent of law, end quote. Now, the NLRB did fine them for that not too long ago. So this appears to be
something new,
which is really weird because it's like, I don't know. That just seems so odd to me that you would be fined for something, and then like a month later, there's another complaint for what seems like a really similar, similar complaint. Also, as first reported by Axios, workers at Sega of America announced they have filed for an election with the NLRB. They say they're seeking better pay, improved benefits, and better staffing to end patterns of overwork. The group is made up of 144 workers across marketing, localization, testing, and other jobs. They are organizing through Communication Workers of America, which I believe is the CWA, I believe, is the union that Raven Studios union filed under. I believe
so. Yeah.
And another one.
The very same.
But that's the popular. That's one of the big ones because the job of like a video game development team, whatever, sort of fits under that, the CWA's umbrella of sort of the trades that they oversee. Two things. This is the stuff I always say.
Yeah.
So first, fuck Activision Blizzard. Just right out of here. Number two, again. Phil Spencer,
Xbox.
what do you? Come on, man. Like, what's going on? Somebody, whoever, The Verge, whoever's privileged enough to get to interview Phil Spencer, somebody needs to answer for this. Does Phil Spencer have any control over this? No, but he's the face of a company that is buying Activision Blizzard.
Yeah.
So to me, that is more than enough to have to answer for. What do you think of this company that you're buying that is constantly getting NLRB complaints about violating workers' rights to not get monitored?
Yeah.
So come on, answer these questions for us, please.
Which, if I'm not mistaken, this is something separate and not necessarily relating only with Microsoft and Activision, but I think the CMA will have their decision tomorrow.
Oh shoot, is it tomorrow?
Yeah.
I think you may be correct.
It was supposed to. I heard from Tim Warren. Tim Warren. It was supposed to be Tom Warren. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Tom Warren. It was supposed to be possibly today, but I think for sure tomorrow.
Okay. Well, the EU seemed like they were on the. They said it's all okay except for this.
Yeah, and then South Africa was like,
there was one in South Africa that was
good.
fine. I don't remember what Brazil did. I don't, because Brazil had,
everybody said yes to it. As far as I'm aware. Yeah.
Yeah, and then so the FTC is the only one that's taking them to like a court scenario. But if the CMA goes, that would be weird if all those
FTC
countries do,
yeah,
and the FTC doesn't. There may be companies where that has happened before. I am not an expert in that history, but I feel like if those dominoes drop, it would be weird for the FTC to somehow win when everywhere else it's going through. But I still don't like the idea, just because big companies are always bad. Are we ready for tidbits?
We are.
Let's do it. What if I told you, in this world, there are bits, and there are tids, and Richard is the only man who can put them together into tidbits?
On our visual podcast, I would love to have one of those like bumpers to where it's just like like tidbits and
like one of those old like news report things.
Yeah, or something like that.
When Jon Stewart used to do his Mesopotamia and like Mesopotamia words would crash into the screen or whatever. Okay.
Something like that. I got a couple here. Atari is acquiring some things. Last week, Atari announced that it has acquired more than 100 PC and console titles from the 80s and 90s, including Bubsy, Demolition Racer, and more. CEO Wade Rosen stated, quote, "Many of these titles are a part of Atari history, and fans can look forward to seeing many of these games re-released in physical and digital formats, and in some cases even ported to modern consoles," end quote. Atari has also acquired the trademarks for Accolade and GTI brands, Accolade being somewhat of a B-tier publisher in the 90s. They created such games as the Test Drive series, very long-running driving series, Hardball, one of the like baseball competitor games, Star Control, which is very cool, like space sim game, and Barkley Shut Up and Jam, and more.
Terrible.
So yeah,
Terrible.
So we'll see. I don't know, but we'll see if whoever this Wade Rosen guy, because I think he's a newer CEO.
I believe
I'll see if see if he turns around the Atari name.
I never like companies getting IPs, but if the company goes out there and starts making the games more available and stuff, it's always good.
Yes.
And you hope that's where the companies go. Can I tell a quick story about Charles Barkley?
Go ahead.
I didn't meet him or anything, but I always like Charles Barkley's reason for not playing football, because he has this anecdote that he has told throughout the years on radio stations and stuff about like being in high school or something. And he tells it in that Charles Barkley like wit, you know.
Oh yeah.
Where he's like, I was on the football field and I got hit a bunch, and then I just turned and said, "So this is all we're doing? We just hit each other? This is the dumbest fucking thing." And he said, and he stopped playing football. I thought that was one of the great Charles Barkley-isms right
He's
there.
one of the smart ones.
Charles Barkley for president, everybody.
More video game movies are coming. After the insane reception of the Super Mario Bros. Movie, folks are now wondering if we'll get any more movies based on video game properties. Not that we already haven't already, but just the flood. Super Mario Bros. Made over $800 million in the box office so far, and it's still climbing. Mr. Miyamoto from Nintendo has reconfirmed to Japanese news site Nihon Keizai Shimbun, I forgot the third word there, that there's no doubt that they will make another film based on Nintendo franchises. It's not just Nintendo, though. I don't know if I've said it on the podcast, but when comic book movies were like right before Infinity War and everything, I told several people, I'm like, video games are next. Like video games are like, there's no doubt about it. Video games are next. So
especially if you can connect them all somehow or some way. Imagine if you can get all the Nintendo characters.
The next Infinity War is a Smash Bros. Movie.
Yeah, like if you can naturally go, like, that sounds ridiculous, but at the same time, it's like, it's Hollywood, it's movies. Like, I don't see it as being so silly that they couldn't do it or anything like that.
Yeah.
I would love a Splinter Cell movie, but I want it old Sam Fisher. I want, like, I don't know, what's the actor that played Walter White?
Bryan Cranston.
I want Bryan Cranston as old Sam Fisher. That'd be good right there. Michael Ironside's a little too old. Maybe you dub his voice. But maybe. I remember as a kid that it was first, like, there was a Sam Fisher movie and Bruce Willis was going to do it, and then it was like Tom Hardy.
Oh, really? Oh yeah, I remember Tom Hardy.
Yeah, and then it was just same thing with like Metal Gear Solid. Like for 20 years,
Metal Gear Solid apparently is still happening.
Yeah,
Oscar Isaac,
which would be a great Solid Snake, but no idea if it's actually going to happen or not.
I don't know, man.
But anyway,
there is murder most to foul over at Konami. Apparently, a 41-year-old Konami employee has been arrested on suspicion of attempted murder of a former boss that he claims subjected him to abuse of power. This is in Japan, by the way. The suspect hit the victim from behind with a fire extinguisher and said he did it with the intent to kill.
Oh, man.
The former boss's injuries, thankfully, are not life-threatening. But that's it.
That's horrible.
That is terrible.
Yeah, it's not good news.
No, it's not.
Why'd you put that in tidbits?
It's a tidbit about video games. I can't guarantee these are going to be good stories all the time.
Let's go back to talking about video game movies, guys. Mario, Luigi, and
for my
Donkey
side,
Kong
that's it for
2.
tidbits.
I've got one, and this is something I wanted to get you guys' opinion on. The Lord of the Rings Gollum game is going to have elven voice acting, but it is behind a $10 paywall.
Yeah.
No, I don't like it.
Well, it's a video game that no one asked for, in a language that no one speaks.
Well, true, but I mean, I don't know. I feel like that's a part of the world.
People do get their rocks off with Elvish.
Yeah, but I mean, at the end of the day, let's make sure that, because they had to train these voice actors to speak Elven.
Sure.
It's not like they just hired Japanese voice actors to do the Japanese dub, German to do the German dub, etc., etc. They had to find people that were willing to learn a fake language for a video game.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I think it's fine to put it behind a $10 DLC because it's not. Yes, it's part of the world, but I mean, you could argue that for a lot of things that that are DLC that shouldn't be DLC.
So what I would argue, and I don't know the whole story, so correct me if there's something I don't know here, but what I would argue is the economics of the video game industry are really complex, right? So when you pay $10 to get the Elven language, is that money really going straight from the PlayStation store or wherever you buy it right to recuperating the losses that the company had in trying to figure out how to get people to speak Elven? So what I'm trying to say here is that drawing the line between the cost of getting Elvish speak and we're going to have to make up for that with a $10 DLC, I don't think it's a straight line, right? And I think there are probably other ways that the games industry could fund those things without having to put up a paywall or sell it as DLC or something like that. Like, if it is a necessity, then fine. If there was no other way they could fund it, if there was no other way that they could get Elvish in the game without tacking on a $10 DLC, then okay. This is very similar to cosmetics, right? Because you hear people talk about, well, you got to support the artists, but it's like, well, okay, but Are you telling me that when I buy a cosmetic in Call of Duty, it drops into the direct deposit of an artist? It's like, of course not. It's more complicated than that. And the question you should be asking yourself is, does Activision Blizzard need to put cosmetics behind a paywall in order to be a sustainable business, right? I think that's the question we should be asking. And if you want to support developers, which we all should, I think the first person we should look at is Kotick, is executives, and say, maybe you shouldn't make so much money. Maybe the employees should make a little bit more. We can improve working conditions that way first. And then once we get that fixed, if you still need this much money to support the game because it's a financial reality, then fine. So,
yeah, let's put it this way. Does the game need Sindarin to sell? Does it need people speaking in Elven for the game to make it to market? No, it's just something extra they tacked on.
Yeah, but does it have to be? Does it? Okay, it's something extra that they tacked on. I understand that, but does it have to be $10 for the game to be a sustainable business venture? That's the question I want to ask, and I don't know what the answer is. My suspected answer is no. Again, think of cosmetics, and this is a spectrum, right? So for example, in Squad started emotes not recently. A lot of people were angry about this because Squad is a highly realistic game. People were worried, oh, what kind of dumb emotes are you going to do? People, whatever. And I think there is some truth in some of that fear. But it's like, okay, but Squad is also a small developer. They don't charge for new maps. They don't charge for new forces. They've added Australia, Canada, I almost said Canada. They added Australia, Canada, China, right? They added all these forces with new weapons, new tanks, new maps, right? New camouflage, all this stuff. And now they brought out this cosmetic. Okay, so again, it goes back to, does Offworld Industries need those emotes to have a sustainable business? Now, Offworld Industries is a small company. So I am more willing to accept the argument that Tyler, from an Offworld Industries perspective, Tyler, yeah, we need the $5 from these emotes because we sell a game at $50 for an entry cost that is on sale 4 times a year on Steam, and that's all we get. We don't charge for anything else, right? So for us to be a sustainable business, we have to sell these DLCs. Now, I'm assuming that the Gollum game is being published by like WB or something like that.
Yeah.
Published by Datalic Entertainment.
Oh, Datalic, really?
Yep.
Well, whoever it's being published by, the question we should have to pose first is whether or not it has to be put behind a paywall in order for it to be a successful business venture, right? I think that's the question we should ask. And if
it is being published by Datalic and Nacon, which is
Okay.
a French video game company.
Yeah. So, and if the answer is yes, absolutely, then fine. I think in most cases, that's not going to be the case. I think in most cases, cosmetics are not actually helping a studio, keep their head above water. I think there definitely are some cases. It's not a black and white thing. So that would be my argument is I'm supposing no, because it's Lord of the Rings. It's this big license. It will be weird if a small studio got the rights to have Lord of the Rings without some kind of funding out of nowhere or something like that, right? Do they really have to put it behind? And also the other argument is it does just suck because that's really cool. That's a really interesting. There aren't very many languages that have been created just for fictional properties. The only 2 I can think of, and there's probably
Other way around.
There's 3.
The fictional property was made for the language.
That's correct. I apologize. No, but the point I'm trying to make here, there's only so many fictional languages that were made famous by a fictional property. And I can think of 3. There's Belta in The Expanse, which is more kind of like Pig Latin in a sense. There's Elvish. Well, Belta is like
it's like heavily based in like Creole.
Yeah, but it has other things.
Yeah, but
okay. I hope that wasn't offensive. Okay,
I think it was a little.
All right, I apologize.
Cancel title.
I didn't mean for it to go on. Sorry, back on track. And the third one is Klingon, right? Because Klingon's an entire language that comes from Star Trek. So, and that's really cool. So if you were to remove like Klingon from a Star Trek game, and you had to pay $10 to hear Kapla or something like that, that would suck. Just purely emotionally, that would suck. And then the financial discussion is another discussion. So there we are. And I think it's Belta Loda. I don't know if that's the correct name. Please don't cancel me. I'm sorry, okay? I'm not Colin Hanks, okay? It's Piglet was the first thing that came to mind, okay? Sasa K? Eh? Okay? All right, cool. All right? Bretta? Okay? I know it, okay? Because I watched The Expanse. All right, so...
I got MPDs.
He has some friends that are belters.
Okay, no. Listen to me, okay? All right, listen. I was on the ship with...
Were you?
With Kamina drummers, okay? And we were going into the ring, okay? So that's Belta Loda. Anyway.
Putting on a little accent there.
I didn't mean to. That was total accident.
Was it?
Go ahead with the NPDs, please.
Alrighty. Oh yeah, we don't have a bumper for NPDs. Hey, end of an era, guys. It's no longer called NPDs. Very quietly over the last 2 weeks, the NPDs merged with another company. And they're now called Circana. So these are Circana numbers, I guess.
Well, it's a good thing we didn't make a bumper because the bumper idea I had would not work.
Yeah.
Matt, what's going on, man? Come on,
I don't know because you'll see it on. Anyways, March 2023 U.S. video game market thread from Circana, verbatim from Matt Piscatello over on Twitter. Consumer spending on video game content, hardware, accessories totaled $4.6 billion, a 5% decline when compared to a year ago. YTD consumer spending fell 1% when compared to the same period in 2022 to $13.6 billion. Still a lot of money. PlayStation 5 lifted hardware spending in March. However, this growth was offset by decline in content spending, where increases in non-mobile subscription as well as digital add-on console content were offset by lower spend across premium games, PC add-on content, and mobile. Premium game spending fell year on year, driven by a tough year ago. Comparable March 2022, which featured 8 new releases ranked among the top 16 bestsellers of the month, as well as strong second month of Elden Ring sales. Resident Evil 4 was the best-selling game of March 2023, instantly becoming the third best-selling game of 2023 year-to-date. Hogwarts Legacy ranked second in March and remained the best-selling game of 2023 to date. Mobile content. Sensor Tower reports top 10 games by U.S. consumer spending in March as Candy Crush Saga, Roblox, Royal Match, Coin Master, Pokemon Go, Township, Gardenscapes, Bingo Blitz, Evany, and Homescapes. March mobile game spending was strong, led by performance of casual games. Casual games had their best month by spend since last March, even surpassing holiday performance. Yep.
Okay.
Video game hardware spending increased 10% when compared to March 2022, reaching $566 million. This is the second highest video game hardware spend for March month in U.S. history, trailing only the $680 million reached in March 2021. That was when we were right smack dab in the middle of COVID.
Was that 2021?
Well, yeah, because the end of 2019 is when we first heard about COVID, and then
2020 was the kickoff.
Beginning of 2020 is when
everything started going
4 years has been a really long year.
Yeah, it has been. Growth in the PS5 hardware spending once again drove March hardware gains. PS5 is the best-selling hardware platform in units and dollars for both March as well as 2023 year-to-date. PS5 hardware unit sales have now surpassed those of PS4 on a time-aligned basis. So 29 months in the market, PS5 has sold more than PS4 has.
Wait, what?
Yep.
How?
Because it has.
That doesn't make any sense, though.
I take it up with Matt, all right?
Yeah, I'm going to take it up with Matt. Matt's lying. No, I'm sure Matt's telling the truth here, but that just seems impossible almost because of how difficult that has been to get a PS5. I guess, but is that maybe also that it took this long to reach the PS4? Is that maybe also an issue with the PS5's trajectory? Or maybe not?
I don't think so, because the PS5 as of now has sold more than the PS4 did in the same time frame.
In the same time frame.
Yeah.
Okay. I wonder if before COVID, if they expected that this threshold to be crossed way sooner, because the popularity of video games is more than it was 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. So I wonder. That's interesting. That still seems crazy to me, though.
Yeah.
But okay.
Year-to-date hardware spending is now 21% higher when compared to the same period in 2022 at $1.5 billion. And accessory spending grew 1% in March when compared to a year ago to $239 million. Gamepads generated the highest dollar sales of any accessory segment, with the PS5 DualSense Black ranking as the month's best-selling gamepad in dollar sales.
Okay.
That's it for the MPDs.
There is, what's that meme where it's like...
Stonks?
Not stonks. No, I'm thinking about, there's like that... It's like, I guess it's somewhat obscure. It's like the crazy, horrifying werewolf in the distance. And the meme is always like, something is just around the corner. Like something that's going to...
Oh, that is a little obscure, yeah.
And it's like lambs are in front of the fruit. But anyway, I feel like that's Tears of the Kingdom when you're reading MPDs.
Oh, sure.
It's all just going to get blown up. As soon as Tears of the Kingdom gets released, all the MPD numbers are just going to be decimated.
It's out, by the way. Like, people have copies now.
Is it breaking street dates?
Yeah, someone's breaking street dates because,
really?
It's out. On Twitter.
Nintendo must be sending hitmen after that person.
They probably will be.
RoboCop is out there shooting dudes in the face and like... drop your copy of Tears of the Kingdom, and then just
Dead
like 80 rounds of 50 caliber right into the guy's chest. What's the you pulled that was impressive.
One of my good friends, his favorite movie of all time is RoboCop, so there have been way too many RoboCop references and jokes made throughout the years that we've known each other, so we are all very good at
RoboCop references.
Yeah.
You used to be on a show, Super Best Friends Place. And I remember I told you the story before, but I watched this random Let's Play a long time ago of you guys, and somebody mentioned RoboCop, and there's a line. What's the actor that plays Red in that 70s show? But that actor is in RoboCop.
Yes.
And he has a line where he's like about to throw a guy out of a car or something, and he goes, "Can you fly, Bobby?" But anyway, somebody mentioned RoboCop.
Woodsmith.
And Richard in this video just drops a perfect "Can you fly, Bobby?" And I started laughing so hard. Oh man, it was just like stone cold crystal perfection. Can you fly, Bobby? It's just like out of nowhere. You guys are playing some funny like the 2D side scroll. I don't know.
Double Dragon probably.
But that was funny. That was very, very funny. Anyway, sorry. Random memory. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Gaming Discourse. Go to our YouTube channel, YouTube/Gaming Discourse. Patreon.com/The Gaming Discourse. You can support us for $2, $4, $7, and $10. Get your name in the credits and others. And we will see you next week.
And check out Gaming Discourse FM.
Gaming Discourse FM, where Richard, you can hear his voice, his smooth jazz voice.
Bye.
Bye.